At the Life Changes Trust, we know that positive relationships matter. But they don't just happen. People have to take time and make time to nurture them. And with care, consistency, and attention, relationships have the power to transform people's lives, including yours.
I think it's about trust and sort of mutual respect.
Nothing's forced, and nothing's like, right, we've all got to be best friends, come on, let's get to know each other. It's not like that. It happened really naturally, and I feel like that's maybe like the best way to go about it.
For me, you just don't give up. Like, no matter how long it takes to get that relationship, it will eventually come. It happens in like normal life with your friends or partners. Like, just don't give up on people.
With relationships, it's all about trust. Like, a relationship, when you have trust and you get encouragement, it's genuinely just a positive thing in your life that will affect how your well-being and how you project yourself out into the world, really.
In terms of building relationships with the young people, it's important to recognise that there may be ups and downs. No relationship is ever smooth, but it's okay to learn and grow from that.
If you put the work into the relationships, then the other stuff, it comes. It really does come. We've all learned that actually relationships and connections, they're everything. We're humans and we are created to connect to each other. That's what's important.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to this webinar this morning. We're so pleased that so many of you have taken time out of your schedules to join us. I'm Carol Patrick. I'm the Director of Evidence and Influencing for the Young People with Care Experience programme here at the Life Changes Trust. It really never gets any easier saying that big long job title on camera. I'm going to be your chair today, and I'll try my best to keep us to time as we move through the programme. For those of you who are new to the Life Changes Trust, I just want to start by telling you a little bit about who we are. So we were formed in 2013 with a £50 million spend out endowment from the Big Lottery Fund in Scotland, now the National Lottery Community Fund. And we were given a mission of transformation to work alongside people living with dementia, unpaid carers, and young people with care experience. And effectively, we're a strategic funder. We're committed to putting people at the heart of everything that we do. And for the Young People with Care Experience programme, that means handing over power to our advisory group to design and deliver and make decisions on grant making. It means employing young people directly on consultancy contracts and on internships. It means putting young people in the lead as we design our legacy projects and we think about what happens beyond the life of the trust. And it means constantly being ambitious and pushing ourselves for what we can achieve working alongside people with lived experience. As a time-limited trust coming to an end next year, we're at the point where we're really keen to share our evidence and learning and to encourage others to build on that. But more than that, we're also in a very reflective phase, as busy as it always is here at Life Changes Trust. And we're asking ourselves some big questions. It's clear that relationships are woven through everything that we do at the Trust. And my colleague Mari is going to dive a bit more deeply into this just in a moment. However, it's also clear that we are constantly learning and growing alongside people with lived experience. And working in a relational way, that's exactly as it should be. We'd love to hear your comments and your reflections and your questions as we go through this morning's session. We're hoping that this webinar can kickstart a greater focus on relational working in the weeks, months, and years ahead, as we all think personally and collectively the actions we need to take to keep the promise in Scotland for children, young people, and families. Today, we're going to be sharing some of the evidence and learning from our independent evaluation into relationship-based policy and practice. And we're delighted to have Lorraine and Mike from the Lines Between to join us to do that. The Trust is also partnering with some brilliant organisations this week, including staff, the Cora Foundation and the National Leadership Network, to keep the spotlight firmly on relationships. And we've got further sessions running this afternoon and also tomorrow. You can find out more details of those on our Eventbrite pages if you would like to. So just before we dive into the session, I've got a few quick housekeeping notes to give you. So this session is around 90 minutes long and it is being recorded. We will be sharing it on our website in a few days' time. So if there's any of your colleagues that are missing out or that you think would be interested, please do share it and look out for the email coming in to let you know it's available. Later in the webinar, we will be having a Q&A panel. So please do use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to log any questions. There's also the chat function if you've got any more general comments or reflections that you would like to share. And please do share these with everyone if you're comfortable doing that. The Trust is really committed to the concept of young people leading. And we're really grateful to 3 of our projects in particular: the Fostering Network's Young Advocates Project, the We Are Citizens group at the Citizens Theatre, and the Love Inc project that's run by Aberlour, for allowing us to capture the voices and perspectives of young people and present them in the webinar to you today. The final thing I'd like to say is just a quick note about language. The Trust has constantly evolved and adapted its language as we have developed as an organisation. And that's due to the deep and enduring relationships that we have with the people that we work with. We recognise that language can be really powerful. It can send a message about who's included and who isn't, even if that isn't the intention. We do use the term young people, but we actually work with people up to the age of 30 and beyond. So we'll also use terms like people with lived experience too. Fundamentally, it's important to us that we're respectful in our language and we always aspire to do better, as you would in any relationship. Now I'm going to ask my colleague, Mary Reid, to join me on screen. Morning, Mary. Thanks for joining us. So Mary is just going to delve in a bit more into relationship-based practice and what that looks like and feels like for us as a trust. So I'll hand over to you now, Mary.
Thanks very much, Carol, and a warm good morning to you all. The dictionary defines relationship as the state of being connected. Now, I can't see you, so I'd love to start by just taking a moment to connect with you. I'd like you to open the chat and type into it any and all of the words that come into your head when you think about relationships. It can be words that are positive or not, words that relate to how people feel through relationships, or even where people experience relationships. Just let each word surface and flow out from your fingertips. I'll give you sort of 10 or so seconds to do that. Wow, that's amazing. Actually, I'm just seeing this all coming up on my screen. Thank you so much for sharing, and please continue to do so. Now, here's a selection of the words that we regularly say and here at the Life Changes Trust when we are talking about relationships. As we enter into the last 6 months of the Trust's work and share evidence of the impact of £50 million worth of funding, everything circles back to relationship-based practice. And the aim of this event is to give you a flavour of what that practice looks like for us and the projects we fund. to explore some of the guiding principles and challenges around this way of working, and to shine a light on why relationships matter. Now, relationship-based practice isn't a new phenomenon. You can go back decades and find people and cultures that have always pushed boundaries. They've always looked beyond processes and models and targets to prioritise a relational approach to supporting young people. The difference now is that this way of working is becoming normalised, and for many, it's actually mandatory. The spotlight is on relationships now, and it's there because there are policy and legislative drivers behind it. From the Christie Commission's emphasis 10 years ago on moving away from top-down expert cultures to the much more explicit requirements of the promise and the incorporation of the UNCRC into Scots law. It's time for everyone who has responsibilities towards children and young people with care experience to step up and invest in ongoing dialogue and reciprocal relationships with them, and demonstrate how listening is accompanied by the meaningful involvement of young people in decision-making. Here at the Trust, we've had time and resource to focus on and invest in lots of different relationships. And we've got a culture that recognises the importance of all these things that you see on your screen. We're all supported in our own ways to prioritise relationships and deepen our understanding of the lives and experiences of the people that we're here for. It takes leadership and support to build a staff team committed to this way of working. We all know that this isn't a 9-to-5 job. Every person in the Trust understands the importance of listening, honesty, and flexibility, and we're all willing to go the extra mile to trust and be trusted by young people. We know this practice has to be mirrored in our role as a funder too. Projects need flexibility and encouragement from us to be able to commit to relationship-based practice. We're always at the end of the phone, and we encourage people to talk to us about applications or any changes that they want to make to their project or budget. We run regular network meetings where practitioners have the opportunity to be together and share stuff, because we think that reflection and peer support is important to all of this. The Trust has always clearly communicated our intention to fund organisations that are ambitious for young people, that are focused on relationships and committed to working in cooperation and not competition with each other. We also make sure that we walk the walk and do the kinds of things that we ask of funded projects. Young people with care experience inform every aspect of our work, and we also make grants directly to them. Now, there's no blueprint for this for relationship-based practice, but we can clearly identify strong guiding principles that support this way of working. I want to bring this to life for you, and I can't think of a better way to start than with our relationship with Trust Advisory Group. The group is made up of passionate volunteers who all have their own experience of care and who give up their time to advise the Trust and deliver transformational funding initiatives. We started our journey together by gaining an understanding about who we are as people and what our shared values and goals are. We got to know each other and built trust before progressing on to some incredible work together. Now, some really important things sit behind that work. We've got dedicated staff time and resource to support advisors and facilitate regular group activity. Making and eating food together, kicking your shoes off at weekend residentials, social activities and having fun together, these have always been present amongst a whole lot of serious work. The Trust gives support, space and permission for staff to make decisions and balance risks. We invest in all those things that are often the first to be questioned when budgets are tight. Training, quality snacks, birthday cards, Christmas presents, supporting job applications, talking through essays for university, or simply having a good chat about the latest box set you've just binged on Netflix. It's so important to have time and discretionary spend for those small, unplanned moments of concern where you know that a simple action could have a big impact on a young person's life. Recognising when work is voluntary and when it is right and appropriate to pay advisors has also been important for us, as is supporting their personal development and their aspirations outside of their work with the Trust. Being flexible with each other has been crucial. The timing of meetings, giving people the space to be heard, being comfortable with people stepping back from the group when they need to. As you'll soon see when we publish the advisory group evaluation later this month, we all get so much out of our relationships with each other. Advisors describe the relationships they've made as lifelong friendships, family, and feeling at home. They value the fact that this work has connected them to a range of opportunities and networks rather than just simply giving them a platform. The group have developed and delivered individual grants initiatives. They've made decisions in hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of funding. They've advised trustees, chaired conferences, provided consultancy support, responded to policy consultations, participated in recruitment, and so much more. They challenge us and they offer invaluable insights and ideas around everything from the language that we use to the scale of our ambitions for young people. They care about us on a professional and a personal level, and we're a better funder and better people because of it. When the pandemic started, we worked with the group to design an individual grants initiative called the Keep Well Fund. It offered up to £250 to young people to support their mental and their physical well-being through lockdown. It was designed as a light touch initiative, so it might not seem like it would be an obvious example to highlight today, but without the relationships that we have, the Keep Well Fund just wouldn't have happened. There were Just Eat deliveries and weekly evening Zoom meetings with advisors who understood what young people would be going through, wanted to do something about it, and knew that we trusted each other to make it happen. There were phone calls to other funders when we were inundated with 800 applications. And there were so many workers who supported a broad range of young people to apply, including those who are often silenced. And one particular application from a young person called Sam will stay with me forever. Sam is non-verbal and has complex learning disabilities. He didn't physically type the words in the application, his worker Jane did, but that application belonged to him. Jane took the time and was able to use her observations and her relationship with Sam to write that application in his voice. Sam was able to tell us that he wanted a trampoline with a safety net, and we were able to fully understand the purpose and joy that a bounce would bring to Sam during lockdown. The application, it just encapsulated everything that we mean when we talk about relationships and rights-based approaches. Now, we're not alone in identifying guiding principles that support this way of working. An evaluation of the impact of the Trust Investment and Champions Boards will be published in November, and it offers brilliant insights and learning around the importance of building relationships when you want to achieve really big things with young people, such as radically improving the way that services are designed and delivered in Scotland. Champions Boards found that taking the time to build strong relationships between young people and between young people and their corporate parents helped to build a strong foundation for influencing activity. Staff sometimes face challenges from people in their organisation who looked at relationship building activity as an extravagance or a cost that had to be justified. A few had to work hard to demonstrate why things like trips and residentials and movie nights were important. But staff recognised that these things not only helped to build relationships, but meant that people felt more able to express themselves freely in a safe and supportive environment. And the physical environment itself was also important. Thinking about the atmosphere within a place and the control that young people have over it can really help to balance power dynamics and create a shared space where young people feel that they're on an equal footing with adults from the get-go. So aside from the policy imperative, why does all of this matter? Well, we've got the evidence to show that practical and emotional support and encouragement through relationships improves well-being and mental health, increases confidence and self-belief, builds trust and teaches us to listen and respect different opinions. And this is as true for us as it is for young people. Young people have told us that through their involvement in initiatives like Champions Boards, they now have a better sense of what a positive relationship actually looks like. And they've learned how to be that positive connection for other young people too. They're more willing to try new things. Now, this might not seem like a big deal, but it's a huge aspect of figuring out who you are and what you want to do with your life. They're engaging more with education, learning how to challenge and be challenged. And because of the relationships they've built through Champions Boards and other trust-funded work, young people are feeling better about themselves and their care experience. They consistently tell us about the importance of safe, inclusive interactions, and they tell us that small things are big things in their world. Someone remembering their name, someone marking an important moment or an achievement in their life. This stuff really matters, but because it really matters, and because conversations are often overly focused on boundaries and risks, this can be uncomfortable territory for people. Even people like me who love building relationships. In previous roles, getting out into communities was the thing that energised me the most. But I was nervous about joining the trust. I knew about their commitment to relationship-based practice, and I thought, well, what if the young people don't like me? What if I do something wrong? What if a young person gets really attached and needs more from me than maybe I'm able to provide? It's easy to look at that list that you put in the chat and just get a bit overwhelmed. But what you soon realise is this is not all on you. You too exist within a network of relationships. This is about how we all work together to support young people to live their best life. It's not simple or easy, but it's worth it. It requires us to challenge ineffective processes, constraints, and opinions around how money and time should be spent. It also requires an investment in and from us as individuals. But the return on that investment, well, it's a life-changing one. I'm going to finish with a reading from Here I Stand. This honest, raw, challenging and uplifting collection of poetry and reflections from people with care experience is just an incredible resource. If you've not read it, it's available on our website, and it's taught me more than any policy paper I've ever read. The poem I'm going to read is called Irene, and just to flag, there is a very brief mention of self-harm in the poem, so feel free to turn down your sound for a minute if you'd prefer not to hear that. So, Irene. Head shaved like the older boys he followed in the hope of acceptance. A small silver hoop in each pierced ear, just like his dad. Self-harm crisscrossed each arm, a boiling rage poured forth on demand. He fought daily with both adults and children, thought it best to be on a war footing. Wasn't everyone going to hurt you? Cut to the quick of your very being? If you were stupid enough to let them, and he'd been stupid on more than one occasion. Except Irene. She came to his room when on late shift 4 nights every month. If she was ill or on holiday with family, then the time between feeling that way was longer. She'd sit by his bed, tenderly stroke his arm, wrist to elbow in gentle rhythm. Looking at him with the eyes of a mother to an ill son, knew he was a little boy needing love. He fought sleep to prolong that feeling, could never keep awake, such was the soporific effect. In those moments, he felt as a child should, secure, full of warmth, a recipient of true care. He vowed never to forget. One day, in the future, I'll write a poem about Irene. Relationships can hurt us and they can cause trauma, but the way out of that hurt and trauma and towards healing and trust and a better life is also through relationships. Boundaries are important and they need to exist to keep everyone safe and well. But relationship-based practice gives us space and permission to challenge taboos and question blanket approaches to things that require nuance. It pushes every single one of us to find the courage to really listen and to connect in a safe and appropriate way. I'm going to hand back to Carol now, but I would just want to thank you for letting me share these thoughts with you this morning. And please get in touch if you'd like to chat.
Thank you so much, Mari, for that opening introduction. And there's so much in there, but I think particularly the point about the importance of small things, especially when we're in this space just now with a big vision of what care should and could look like in Scotland with the promise. It's easy, I think, to get caught up in some of the big structural changes that might need to happen and the conversations about infrastructure and budgets and all of those things. If we miss the point about the small, everyday interactions, then we're doing young people, children, families a disservice. thank you again so much for that input. Maya's going to be joining us again for the Q&A session later on, so please do use the Q&A function and the chat to log your comments and any questions. It's now time to hear directly from some of our projects, and we've got a film for you which features 3 projects. So those are the We Are Citizens project, which formed a care experience theatre company to showcase and celebrate the talents of the young people involved and give them space to express what's important to them. We've also got the Young Advocates project, which is run by the Fostering Network, and that's a project that focuses on young people in foster care and also the families of foster carers, and it's around combating stigma and educating the educators to better understand life in foster care. And the third project is called Love Inc, and it's run by Aberlour, but it's a partnership which involves Includum, the Care Inspectorate and Celsius. And the focus is on collaborating with young people to change practice within the care system and to focus much more on love. So we asked these projects to give us their take on relationships and how important they've been within the projects, but also more generally within their lives. Let's hear what they had to say.
This project is mainly just to reduce stigma of foster kids and young people in care, and this project we used it through song and music. So we constructed the lyrics, we got in touch with someone who could help with the melody and create the actual song, we got in contact with people who could do the music video, and overall just made this thing that was easier for kids to engage with, to learn more.
To echo what Charlie said, to raise awareness and reduce stigma for care experienced young people in Scotland, but we also included sons and daughters of foster carers as well as part of the experience. And the people that were involved in the project got together, built up relationships, and then they decided what creative activities they wanted to explore and do in order to have their voice heard to educators, to foster carers, to other professionals, and whoever else would listen, basically. So
basically, our project is we are working with children and young people with care experience and with the workforce. And we're predominantly working within residential settings, but we do lots more wider systemic work as well. And it's all about us exploring how our children and young people experience love in their lives, and how we as the adults who work with them and look after them provide that love, how we deliver that love, and how what is important to our children and young people in terms of experiencing love in their homes and in their relationships, and in everything that they experience within their wider care experience, and making sure that can be as loving for them as possible. So it's about asking them what's important, and it's about talking to the workforce as well and seeing how we can support them to make our children's experiences as loving as possible.
WAC stands for We Are Citizens, and it's a theatre company which involves care experienced people from all different backgrounds and stuff like that. And we basically just really meet on a regular basis and do some drama. I think that's the easiest way for me to explain it.
It's a performance company, so everything that we do leads towards putting on shows. We've managed to put on one big show called Whatever Happened to the Jagged Nettles just before the lockdown. But I'm just really proud that we've managed to keep going through the lockdown. And we created a lovely wee Christmas show called Elf Strike, didn't we, Chloe?
Yeah,
that was all done in Zoom.
it's important that they have that opportunity to just build upon those relationships and build that trust and just have fun and meet up and hang out and do things that aren't always to do with the project. And sometimes other creative activities that we did, nothing came out of it for the project, but sometimes other creative activities we did organically, like things from that came for the project. So it was just about finding what people wanted to do and things that, like what Charlie said, can help them in their future lives or something that they're passionate about.
We learn from each other. We might have different perspectives on things, but it's always done in a respectful way, and we all value each other's opinions, I think, and realise that sometimes values may differ, but I think for like me, I think it's the softer stuff, like me and Liz were saying earlier. It's a bit hard to capture this, but it's just the things like Liz checking in, making sure you're okay, just always being there and supportive, really. That's been a big part of the project for me.
I was going to pretty much just say the same. For me, it's just caring, whether it's work with the kids that you work with or your work colleagues. Like, I think you just need to care about each other, because it's important knowing that you've got people there for you. Like, if it is the young people, that they know it's important that they've got you there, or even you know it's important that you've got people that you work with that you can speak to. So,
And when we've spoken to our children and young people about what's important to them, the most, a loving worker, what does that feel like? What does that look like? And it's about somebody who follows through, who does what they say they're going to do, who's their champion and who goes above and beyond what might be their job. And that's how we approach our work as well, is that, it's about taking it to that level, because it's about love. It's not just about doing your job. It's not just about going, to the extent of your job description. It's about like really being reliable and being somebody's champion, and them knowing that you've got their back. I think that's like, a couple of young people said that to us, that I know that person's got my back, and regardless of what happens, they'll have my back. And I think we know that about each other as a team. If anybody's having stuff going on in the bigger, the other world that's not work, then we can support each other through that. That's what it's about.
I think it's just knowing that the people are there, like, no matter how much you push them away or stuff like that, just knowing that they're going to be there for you, even through the hard times, is really important.
Nothing's forced, and nothing's like, right, we've all got to be best friends. Come on, let's get to know each other. It's not like that. It happened really naturally, and I feel like that's maybe like the best way to go about it. Is like, I think patience is a big thing as well, because a lot of people, we've all gone through bad times in our lives, and we've all had times where it's really hard to trust people, even in a acting capacity. Sometimes it's like maybe the person you don't trust is yourself, so you're very closed off and you don't want to open up too much. So I feel like having that patience to kind of get to know someone and not rush it too much, I think, is really important.
And I think being creative together is like from the beginning, and like going and working in wee groups within the bigger group, and then coming back and sharing that. That's how you become pals. It's not, so it's like, it's the making of being creative together, I think, really bonds everybody.
I felt if our relationships weren't as strong, the song wouldn't have been the way it is. The music video wouldn't have been the way it is. We wouldn't have been as confident to do webinars as we have.
The reason why it worked so well was because you were genuinely all just so nice and respectful to each other. And then it just had a knock-on effect?
With relationships, it's all about trust. Like, a relationship, when you have trust and you get encouragement, it's genuinely just a positive thing in your life that will affect how your well-being and how you project yourself out into out into the world, really.
In my past career, the way that I always worked, I think relationships were always hugely important to me, but they weren't like the core, the fundamental thing. You know, there was other times where I had to give out the tasks and stuff rather than the relationships. But we've learned in this project that if you put the work into the relationships, then the other stuff, it really does come. It has to be natural and it has to be genuine and authentic as well.
I just think like we've witnessed it ourselves, you know, where people are doing participation work and they want to engage young people, and when they don't have such a good relationship, it does really impact on the work that they're trying to do, and the young people just do not want to engage as much, so it might take you a little bit longer to build those relationships and just get to know each other, but actually it's worth it in the long run. Like one young person in particular, who's been supported quite closely, and done some volunteering with the project, and a lot of that's down to the relationship that she had with Liz, but just to see her like doing really well and flourishing right now, like for me that just makes me feel so proud. Like
I've never had a job that I felt as proud of and I've felt as passionate about as this one, you know. And I just love working with our young people and working with Rianne and Erin, and the relationships that we've built over this past 3 years have made our project the success that it's been.
I think relationships are really important, and I think we've all built those very naturally. But I feel like even if one day, you know, citizens turn around and say, yeah, WAC's stopped, we don't have the funding anymore, I feel like that won't be the end of those relationships. And I'm still including Martin and all the other workers, because I feel like that's just, you know, once you're around with citizens, we're around with citizens, aren't we? So, no.
I think it's important for WAC that people's care experience is part of them, but when you come to WAC to act and to make work, and you happen to be care experienced, and I think that I personally think they can do anything, and what's very exciting for me is like writing stuff that I think is really hard, and then watching them like just devour it. It's amazing. It's very exciting to work with them.
Huge thanks to our colleagues in the Love Inc project, the We Are Citizens and the Young Advocates for sharing their thoughts so generously with us in that film. And there was so much food for thought there, and I'm sure that you'll agree with me. It's particularly lovely to hear directly from young people that have been involved in those projects. So thank you to everyone who's involved in making that happen. Now we'd really like to share some of the evidence of impact and key learning points from our independent evaluation into relationship-based policy and practice. This evaluation covered 2 of our funded initiatives, Creative and Active Lives and Workforce Development. These initiatives had their own focus areas, but we were really keen to examine their impact using the lens of relationship-based policy and practice. So we have Lorraine Simpson and Mike Nicholson from the Lines Between, who are joining me on screen just now. And I'm going to hand over to the 2 of you just to take us through those key findings. Thank you.
Whew, thanks, Carol. That's a hard act to follow. So this morning, we're going to introduce you to the learning about relationship-based practice that emerged through some recent evaluation work we carried out for the Life Changes Trust. And echoing the building blocks of relationships, we're going to do this presentation through a conversation format. But I'd also urge you to read our report
the Life Changes Trust is going to publish it in a few weeks' time. And we've had some brilliant early feedback about the learning captured in the report. It's a whopping 80 pages long, but the sections are clearly signposted so that readers can go to the elements that they're most interested in and jump straight into those sections. This conversation is only really a chance to give you a flavour of what we learned. I'm Lorraine Simpson. I'm Managing Director of The Lines Between, and this is my colleague, Mike Nicholson. He's one of our senior researchers, and Mike's going to tell you a little bit more about our work.
The Lines Between is a social research company formed by Lorraine in 2012. We've got 6 staff who work on a range of social research projects. At the moment, our work is as diverse as ever. We're evaluating suicide support, obesity prevention, and film education work, amongst many other interesting projects. Our focus is always on accessible social research, and our aim is for research that's understandable, useful, and leads to change.
We've worked closely with the Life Changes Trust over recent years, are evaluating elements that strand 2 of their focuses. So people living with dementia, and work with young people with care experience. And the learning that we'll share today comes from an evaluation of 2 distinct initiatives, the Creative and Active Lives Initiative and the Workforce Development Programme.
So just to introduce you to those 2 initiatives, they were both funding streams which supported a range of projects. Creative and Active, as the name suggests, involved activities for young people delivered by places like Moniackmore Creative Writing Centre, Citizens Theatre, Edinburgh Leisure and Impact Arts. So young people involved in creative and active pursuits, often with paid staff members alongside. Meanwhile, the Workforce Development Initiative trialled ways in 7 projects in varied organisations where staff increased their understanding about the experiences of young people with care experience and involved young people in thinking through and influencing changes to working practice.
So the Trust asked us to explore relationship-based practice within the initiatives. They wanted to know what this practice looks like, does it work, does it have a positive impact, and what are the challenges of working in this way?
So I'll kick the conversation off with Lorraine and ask her, what did we find out about relationship-based practice? What are the roots of it working well?
Well, as we've just heard from the videos, trust is at the heart of it. And I think that everyone will recognise that trust is the foundation for a good relationship building. And it's no surprise that it's crucial for young people with care experience, but particularly for those who might not have felt acknowledged or listened to before. Staff across both of the initiatives developed relationships with young people through demonstrating trust and belief in the people that they work with. And in doing that, they reinforce the messages that young people's feelings and opinions matter and that their experiences and perspectives are valid.
So can we paint more of a picture of this thing called trust? What does trust look like for staff working with young people?
It's spending time, so taking the time to spend time with young people and making that a priority. It's sincerely listening to them, and it's building an understanding of a young person's experience and how that might influence the way that they engage with others, or how much they might trust or buy into a service that, saying that staff or an organisation will do what it says it will.
And were projects doing this anyway, or did their practice begin to look different through the work of these initiatives?
It varied depending on the project. So the Creative and Active Lives projects were funded to provide creative and active activities for young people with care experience. And for some of those staff and organisations, this was the first time that they'd really ventured into that kind of detailed, close work with young people specifically with care experience. And so for those, there were some real radical changes in understanding and practice that emerged because it was the first time that they'd considered these issues and how their practice and might have to change. So the adaptation took place across the life of all the projects, partly because of the learning that emerged, and then also partly because it was forced by the context of COVID. So staff were consciously working differently, and during our evaluation, which spanned the 2 years, they reflected on the changes that they were making as it happened. And much of it kind of boiled down to making the time to speak to young people in different ways. And that was slowing down, essentially, allowing agenda-free conversations to happen, or creating environments or kind of social situations where agenda-free conversations would specifically happen.
And so if working in that way is a bit different, that's slowing down and freeing up the agenda. What was the result of that? What did we find was the result?
So the conversations brought a new understanding between staff and young people. It let them know who they were, what was important to them, what they valued, and it shifted the power dynamics in those relationships to a sense of more equality and understanding. And that gave an opportunity for stronger and more open relationships to form.
So what does that actually mean then for the young people involved? If someone is prioritising them and getting to know them better because they're slowing down the conversation, taking more time, what is the effect of that?
So there were lots of different impacts from this specific kind of work that the projects were doing in terms of, engagement with creativity and exploring new passions and developing new skills and confidence and self-belief. But across the two initiatives, particularly when we talked about relationships, young people told us that they felt safer, that their needs were being met, that they wanted to be involved and that they were staying involved in things, and that they saw not just that they were being listened to, but the things that they were sharing were influencing change in the staff and the organisations that they were working with. And collectively, these things fed young people's confidence and belief that they could be open and honest about their experiences, their circumstances, and any challenges that they are facing.
And one area of interest for us was to look at how different was this approach from previous practice. How big a shift was it for projects to take time and develop deeper relationships with young people? And this took us into discussion around organisational culture, how relationships with young people had been perceived and managed before, and also what were the limits of boundaries in these maybe adjusted staff young people relationships.
So what were the big shifts, and how did the projects make the shifts?
Well, some projects consciously set out to shift power dynamics and ensure that boundaries were different from those that they might have traditionally had between young people and staff before. So they might have set very different ground rules for a group, or they may have stepped out of role and provided practical support for an individual beyond what might previously have been done. That particularly happened during COVID times.
So yeah, I was going to ask, these projects were operating through COVID. How did COVID and the restrictions affect them?
Well, every one of us obviously has been affected by COVID, and one of the big changes, and that's why we're online today, is lots of us have moved online with our activities and engagements, and that was the same for some of the projects as well. And as we've all experienced, online work was not straightforward at times. It was difficult for some. Some young people didn't want to engage in that way. But also, as again, many of us might have experienced, sometimes online connections actually lead to some greater informality. So people's homes and lives became more visible to each other. That would never have happened before in a world of much sort of stricter boundaries and much clearer lines about personal lives being cut off, perhaps. But people told us about how pets or other family members or posters or a musical instrument in the background had broken the ice in conversations and in relationships in a new way. So adapting delivery during the pandemic and offering support to young people in these very peculiar circumstances actually led to flexibility in how and when projects worked with young people. Staff were using new and different digital channels, navigating the challenges around safeguarding that came with that. So it was a big shift, but ultimately had some positive aspects as well. And then one of the other things that happened in these projects, sometimes with a specific aim, was that care experience began to be looked at differently.
Yeah, so we saw examples where a young person's experience of the care system and that knowledge became viewed as an asset, recognised that they had knowledge which was vital to change individual and organisational attitudes and practice. And this understanding was at the root of change. It helped to change referral processes, it helped to change the way that engagement took place or transitions at the end of a young person's involvement. And there were also shifts in practice and approaches to better meet young people's needs while they were involved in a project. So it could be things like changing the staffing structure for session delivery, or adjusting the delivery environment or the timing or the format of sessions.
And in the workforce development initiative projects that we looked at, viewing care experience as an asset led to some very specific pieces of work which could ultimately impact on workforces. So 2 examples, Fostering Network, who we heard from in the film earlier on, young people with experience of foster care produced a powerful and creative set of resources aimed at teachers. And that was born out of their own experience of seeing a lack of knowledge in the education sector about fostering and a deep desire to address this. And that resource now exists as a support to teaching staff. Bernardo's in North Lanarkshire worked with the housing department there, and young people who had experience of being allocated housing and living independently for the first time became involved in the design of supported flats for other young people moving into independent living, and also were involved in commenting on their experience of housing department procedures, which directly led to some changes in protocols. Those are just 2 of some of very varied examples where young people's voices were impacting on workforces and on work practices. Those examples were more formalised than we found in Creative and Active because they involved the creation of specific structures for involving young people, and with young people driving the direction of the eventual output. But at the heart was young people feeling sufficient trust in staff and in the process to get involved and to share their voice.
And everything that we've talked about has been very positive, but it's also important to note that there are some challenges and risks with this approach that staff talked about when they reflected with us in interviews. They talked about, you know, the challenge of forming stronger and deeper relationships, but the concern around blurring the lines of appropriateness and boundaries and how they were kind of considering those in the work that they were doing with young people. Sometimes staff actively establish boundaries. You know, they needed to do that to strike a balance between their personal and professional commitments, or to manage the expectations of the young people that they were working with. And projects handled this differently. So some projects took a more formalized approach to managing boundaries. For example, they co-created with young people agreements that set out guidelines around appropriateness. That's pretty much all we've got time to share with you in our very brief conversation. So I'll just kind of summarize the conclusions that we put in the report. So essentially, we found that across the 2 initiatives, there was clear evidence that the changes that the Trust wanted to see were evident. There were benefits for the young people who got involved. They were engaged more in activities. Being involved made a difference to them in a huge number of ways, and it had the positive experience kind of informed the next steps, or they told us that they thought it was going to be a lasting change for them. And in the Workforce Development Initiative, there were improvements in practice, shifting culture, and changes to services. Collectively, the projects were demonstrating the importance of involving young people and understanding young people's perspectives and experiences, of reconsidering why and how staff or organisations approach delivery in certain ways, of working collaboratively to achieve change, and having the flexibility, crucially, to implement new approaches. There were challenges and complexities, clearly. You needed time to establish and embed approaches, and staff and young people needed support sometimes to work collaboratively, and organisations needed to commit to this with buy-in, you know, at a senior level to show that this was a priority and that, you know, the time and the resource will be given to working in this way. But in addition to achieving change, and I think as the video showed, this work had a personal impact for and was meaningful for the staff who were involved, as well as the young people. Everybody talked about it as a thing that had caused them to really reflect on what they were doing and why. So unfortunately, that's all we have time for in our conversation, but I'll look forward to answering any questions in the panel session. Thanks to Mike too, and now I'll hand you back over to Carol.
Big thanks to Mike and Lorraine for that input there, and a lot of really strong findings, I'm sure you'll agree. The report's actually available on the Trust website at the moment, and we'll send you all a link to that after the event. Please do take a look. It's a really fascinating read. We're so pleased with the findings in that report. I do want to say a special word of thanks actually to the Lines Between for their approach to this evaluation project. At the commissioning stage, we were really excited by their plans, which were so creative and very participatory. And then, of course, COVID-19 hit, and it was a case of almost back to the drawing board. They really did an excellent job of adapting in really difficult circumstances, and particularly in terms of capturing the voice and experience of young people. So I do want to thank them for that. It's now time for the short break, which will be for 10 minutes. Please do remember to post any questions in the Q&A section that you might have. Before you go though and put the kettle on, we're taking you into the break with a song. You'll have heard in the film that one of the projects, the Young Advocates, uses music and arts as a means of self-expression. And it's the investment in relationships that makes that creative work possible. I'm going to share a quote with you from one of the Young Advocates, Caitlin, to kind of explain this. She said, "We have to trust one another in order to feel comfortable enough to share our work and our experiences, which can then help us to collaboratively come together and create high quality work. The place that I call home certainly is high quality work." Please enjoy the song and we'll see you in 10 minutes following the break. Thank you.
Once upon a time when I was small, I left my house, I was hugging my doll. Felt alienated, detached, and so alone. Was that the place that I called home? Magic mirror on the wall, use your power to be stand tall. Ugly duckling to a beautiful soul. All of a sudden the pain was gone. I am a beautiful, confident young lady. Nicholas Sturgeon and Fiona Duncan, this song is for you to keep on fucking to our corporate parents and care of you. Pinky promises, please come true. Magic mirror on the wall, use your power to help me stand tall. Ugly duckling to a beautiful swan. All of a sudden the pain was gone. Show me affection, I crave for protection. Don't let me go, help me grow. I am a beautiful, confident young lady. 'Cause we wrote this song for you to sing and stand by people like us so easily. Family should be determined by love and not votes. That's the place that I call home.
Welcome back, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed that break, and more importantly, I hope you enjoyed the song from our Young Advocates project. Thank you again to everyone that was involved in that. And Amy's very kindly put the link to the song into the chat. So anyone that would like to view it again, you can get that link in the chat there. So now it's time to go into our question and answer session. So please do pop any questions that you've got into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. And I'd like to invite the members of our Q&A panel to join me now on screen. Welcome everyone, great to see you. So Mari and Lorraine, we've kind of met you a little bit already this morning, but it's great to see a couple of new faces. So welcome to Carolyn Sawyers, who's the Acting Chief Executive at the Cora Foundation. And big welcome, big hello to Sylvie Douglas, who's the founding director of Mrs. And also was the co-chair of the Edges of Care group on the Independent Care Review. So it's brilliant to have you both joining us. Thank you very much. Carolyn, can I maybe ask you to start by saying a little bit about the Cora Foundation and the importance of relationship-based practice within your work?
Happy to, Carol. Thanks very much. And hello, everyone. And I've just noticed that Sylvie and I have got the polka dot thing going on today, so we can wave at each other across Glasgow. Lovely to be here and great to have the invitation to share some time with you. So Cora Foundation, like Life Changes Trust, is an independent charitable funder. We're working to strengthen people's voices and their power to bring about change, and we do that by making grants to third sector organisations with their own resources. We make grants alongside partners like the Scottish Government, and we also work alongside communities really to develop and champion their ideas for change. Since Carol's given me the chance, there were three wee things I want to just kick off into this start of the discussion, if I can, about why relationship practice matters to Cora. And the first, I suppose, is that we've learned that organisations that have relationship-based practice kind of at the heart of what they do really are best placed to support people to thrive and to bring about changes they want to see in their lives. So that's the kind of work that we try to fund. And really a research project we did back in 2019 really kind of brought this, really cemented this for us. It was called Connections Are Key, and it identified elements of kind of practice that maintained and strengthened relationships. Lots of similar lessons to the work that Lorraine and others have spoken about already in the session today. The key thing I got actually out of the research is an understanding about all the different layers at which this kind of relationships point works at. You know, so obviously relationships within families, relationships between individuals or families and practitioners. I think that feels obvious, but for me, I really gained more of an understanding about the importance of relationships between practitioners working across sectors particularly, and relationships between people in their communities, especially the communities of connection that they create for themselves. The second point I wanted to make is it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it, is true in funding as in any other world. So, you know, relationship-based practice for a funder means being on the end of a phone when people have got questions, they're making an application, or when the system goes in the middle of the night, you're trying to put something in. It means making long-term grants, because we're in the business of relationships, not one-night stands. And it means a central and leading role really for people with lived experience of the issues, intentionally shifting power in grant-making, decision-making processes. Thirdly and lastly, I just wanted to mention what relationship-based practice means for Cora and kind of try to bring about bigger changes on issues like human rights, racism, the way public services are organised. So we're in and around that space, but we, Cora, can't make a difference on stuff like this ourselves. We can help build pots of funding with others. We can bring unexpected folk to the table. We can amplify voices and stories. And for me, that means taking time, respecting other people's views and their ideas. It means debating and compromising. And it definitely means like hanging about long enough to see if what you can do together is more than the sum of the parts.
Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, brilliant start and a good reflection in terms of all those different actions at the small level and the real kind of big picture stuff too. And Sylvie, then, can I invite you just to say a little bit about Mrs. and how important relationships are within your work?
Of course, Carol. Hello, everybody. What an amazing event. It's been absolutely incredible. I've been really inspired and just really moved and just really touched with the honesty and the sharing of practice around relationships and the conversations. It's so good that we're having these conversations because they're ultimately key And Carol, I absolutely loved your, it's not what we do, it's how we do it, because a way of being is equally important. So yeah, and thank you, I'm really grateful to be here. So I'm Sylvie and I'm the founder of Ms, Miss and Mrs, and like myself, my whole team have a variety or a form of lived experience and diversity, so it brings a real richness to the table. Often a lot of the women that we employ have come through Ms, Miss and Mrs, and we work to train and upskill and bring their fabulousness here, because that's what we need. We're a social enterprise and we're based in the north of Glasgow, and we exist to empower women and girls with lived experience of health and wellbeing inequalities to build and strengthen their capabilities, their self-esteem and their self-worth. So we realise that relationships are the heart of everything that we do. We're aware that when you come from hurt and pain, there's a duty of care to make sure that you offer a community that is curious and that there's a consistency, there's honesty, and there's a safety also as well about that shared experiences. And we always ask here at Ms, Miss, Mrs, we never assume anything, and we always respect the fact that women and girls have the authorities in their own life. Relationships for us are so important, and they take so much time to actually build, and that's about getting to know the individual. And I loved something that was said earlier, and I think it was Chloe that said it, around about when you've come from a place of hurt, and I know this myself with my own experiences, that it takes time, and you want to see that consistency, and you'll push boundaries, and you'll wonder if you'll be left, or how invested actually are you in my life, and are you going to put the needs of me first? So we spend a lot of time creating an environment here in our hub and the other spaces that we have, so that women can feel valued. But ultimately, even with the team, you talked about culture and things like that. It's like the team all have forms of lived experience, and life is life, and things happen, and there's kids, and there's relationship issues, and there's work issues, and there's all of the bits that we have to go through. And I think it's about spending the time just really listening, and then figuring out what can we do to support you on the next part of your journey. So relationships are key to us, and we concentrate a lot on that, right down to, it might be a cup of tea, even to the welcome that happens when you come in the door, or the first phone call that you take. So that takes an awful lot of time for us, and it might be that it could be 3 months before a woman will actually come to our space, but we're consistent and we're always there. And it's always about addressing sometimes the immediate need. And then it's about the trust that builds from that. So for us, it's about ensuring that we make someone feel valued in order to build that connection and trust. So that is us.
Thanks so much, Sylvie. Yeah, and lots of echoes there, I think, in what we heard in the film earlier about, investing in that relationship first, and then everything else kind of flows from there. And that obviously a strong theme within the evaluation, as Lorraine was presenting, particularly around the agenda-free conversations and the spaces that we create for those. So I'll kick off with a question that's coming in the Q&A from Craig Campbell. And I think, if I understand Craig's point, really, is that there are a lot of people who are practicing in a very relational way, and that he values that opportunity to get together with peers and to discuss that. But his question really is about, building relationships, sometimes in quite a short space of time. He feels it's something that he does quite well. Is it something that you've either got or you don't have, or is it something that you can kind of learn? And he's particularly asking about, maybe some people in corporate parents and things. So yeah, maybe I could ask Lorraine if you would like to respond to that first, please.
I think that I was really interested in that, when we started our evaluation, like specifically, there's another question in the chat about like what does it actually mean at a practical level? What do you do? And from those that we spoke to in the interviews, kind of, we'd ask that, like, how do you do this work? What does it mean? And so there would be things that anybody could do, I think, that is around really taking time to understand and remember elements of an interaction with a person. So it might be remembering that they like a specific kind of biscuit, or that they're excited about something at the weekend. So you follow up and you ask them a question. Some people can remember that because that's the kind of brain they have. Some would be like, I put that in my case notes. Like that's something that I'm going to follow up with afterwards. And in the conversations, in the same way that Mary was quite open at the start about her kind of nervousness about, you know, will people like me? You know, will I be able to work effectively in this way? Will it be too much for me to work in this way? Practitioners talked about just coming to recognize that you don't have to be an extrovert to be great at making relationships, that people value, you know, gentler approaches and quiet spaces. So just really understanding yourself and how you form relationships and what works for you, and really, you know, that kind of mindfulness of like, how do I trust people? How do I get to know people? And building that into practice. So I think the problem is, you know, there isn't a quick way to build a relationship with someone. It's like, I really like to Karen's comment about, you know, it's not a one night stand. It's like a marathon. You can't just turn up and run a marathon. You actually have to put the miles and the time in. And it's the same with the relationships. Like you need to just spend time getting to know one another. So yeah, I think that, you know, well, we're assuming that everyone who's working in this field is bought into the you know, the work, that they care about it, that they value it, that they value young people and they want to bring about positive change. So I think there's space for everyone in that to take a relationship-based approach. But what you need is understanding how you do that, and then being given the direction and the support at a senior level, so you've got the resources and you've got the time to work in that way. So I think, yeah, it's a, you know, practitioner kind of response, but it also needs an organisation to buy into that way of working too.
Thanks, Lorraine. Thank you. Carolyn, any thoughts?
I was just going to chip in on the back of what Lorraine said there, actually, in that Connections Are Key research. Actually, that was the point that came out in the research, was that sense that there are people within the sector, practitioners, who do have a natural aptitude, and you know, I really celebrate that and acknowledge that, and knowing that we can also recruit for that. You know, you obviously recruit for qualifications, but recruit for that aptitude. And I'm going to embarrass Mary since we're on the panel together, but you know, Mary's a person that I've learned from over the years. She's got a natural aptitude, and I've learned and watched how she builds relationships, and one of the people I've worked with over time who I've learned the most from. The other thing I wanted to mention though is, like, it's a bit like, do you write with your right hand or your left? Like, I'm left-handed, but I can write with my right hand. I just take a bit of time and I concentrate and I do it. And if I did that and I wrote you a note with my right hand, you'd really appreciate the time that I'd taken to really, you know, patiently make sure that I got that right for you. So I think we need to balance that idea of, let's recruit for those aptitudes, let's value those skills, but let's also support people who can just about learn to write with the right hand, and make sure that they're getting the time and space to do that as well.
Thank you. Sylvia, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I just following on from what Lorraine and Callan was saying as well, and it was mentioned earlier as well that you might not always be the right person to build that relationship, and it's about that also. And I know that for us in the team, we've got a variety of personalities, a variety of experiences, and it's about understanding that and being aware of that actually, if you're introverted or extroverted, or you know, you might have an experience of one thing and not the other. And that's why as a team, we spend a lot of time together, just, you know, saying, listen, how can we best support? What is it we need to do? And is that you that needs to build that relationship, or is it me that needs to build that relationship as well? So I think for us, it's really key that we have that, like Callan was saying, about the variety of skills and professionalism or qualifications, but lived experience or understanding and personality, which is key, because sometimes not everybody wants you to be, I'm a chatty Cathy, and not everybody wants a chatty Cathy. So it's great. We've got a whole variety here, which is brilliant. So yeah, definitely a variety of people. That's what makes life.
Absolutely. Yeah, play to strengths, absolutely, Sylvia. Thank you. Thanks so much. So yeah, we're running out of time a little bit, but we've got time for one more question that's come in via the chat. So Mari, I'll maybe start with you for this one. So yeah, there are great examples have been given around building trust, but the questioner would love to know more practical examples. What can we all introduce, and what can we all take out from our practice today that would help to build trust? And that question's actually coming from Holly. So Mari, if you would start.
Okay, so what can we put into our practice? I mean, I think building on what everybody said already, it's not about homogenization. It's not about making everyone the same person and you all have to work really closely with young people and go out to the cinema with them and do it. It's about understanding everyone's roles and taking the time to get to know young people and their experiences in whatever way suits your role, you know. So for some people it's watching this, it's actually watching this back. You might be a person that sits in the finance department and you've got to understand, like, I need this grant to go out on time because I understand that young person's life. Now, they might not spend a lot of time with them, but they understand it and they've taken the time to watch stuff like this. So I think trying to put more of that in people's work and their lives is important, just getting to know people in the right way. What you can take out, rules, processes, like just feeling restricted by things. I mean, as I said earlier, I'm not saying to get rid of everything. It matters. People need to be safe, they need to be protected, but don't just blanket stuff when it comes to changing people's lives. Just doesn't work because everybody's different, and the nuance matters.
Thanks, Mary. Anyone else like to chip in? We've maybe got time to pick up on one more question and then unfortunately we need to bring it to a close. Okay, so just, yeah, one more question. So, yeah, Laura's asked, what messages do staff need to hear from their management and their leaders to feel comfortable about taking the time to build relationships, to maybe focus less on goals and outcomes, and put relationships first? Sylvie, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. And it's one of the things that we discussed here a lot as well. And we're really fluid. And it's a cup of tea or spending time. We don't monitor, we don't look for, you know, creating time or space, because you can't just block things into a 20-minute or a 50-minute it's about being there and being present. And you can only do that when you're given the full permission to say, that person's really important, so it might take a bit of time, and that's what you do, is just to kind of cultivate that. So I know for us it's about the culture and the environment that we create as well, and I think that managers and leaders have responsibility to, you know, like Carl says, it's not what we do, it's how we do it, and we have a responsibility to do that with the team also, because it gives them the full permission that they need to spend the time that's valuable. So yeah, we've all got a responsibility and a duty of care to each other to set an example. So I would just say, just go for it. It's important. Thanks. It's important.
Thanks, Sylvie. Yeah, and Carolyn, anything to add to that?
I just love that idea of maybe reinforcing that message about how much time is in your head is taken up with risk, money, you know, pressures of outcomes and outputs. I shouldn't say this stuff under outcomes, obviously incredibly important, but you know, like as you're sitting with someone, how much of your headspace is taken up by that idea of risk, time, money, I need to get this done. It's not a linear journey, and I think leadership can reinforce that point. Those things are important, but keep them in their place and leave much more of your brain, much more of your time, much more of yourself to be thinking about the journey that's ahead.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Yeah, and I think that's something that's a theme that's come up quite strongly for us in our evaluations so far, is just, I suppose, that idea of letting go a little bit more, just being a little bit braver and letting things kind of play out, giving people that opportunity to have a bit more time and space and to get to know one another as humans. That creates the foundation then for so many unexpected things that we could never anticipate when we're trying to set goals and outcomes at the beginning of any kind of programme. So I think there's something incredibly powerful about working in that kind of way. But I think we also have to acknowledge as managers and leaders and people with strategic responsibilities in organisations that it can be a tough call, and it's important that we're constantly having these conversations within our organisations, because we all need support to be able to work in that kind of way. Okay, unfortunately we've run out of time and we have got more questions. This is always what happens, isn't it? But thank you so much to our panel members for joining us today. Really appreciate you giving us your time. Thank you. So yeah, we've now come to the end of this morning's session. So I'd just like to thank everybody that's contributed today, to all of our speakers and to our panelists who gave their time to make this event possible. And a special thank you to all of the young people that have been involved. As we mentioned earlier, we'll email out the link to the webinar and to the report, so please do take a look at that. And just finally from me, just to say thank you very much for supporting this webinar. We really appreciate it at the Trust, and we hope that we'll see you at our future events. Thank you again, everyone.